My two oldest boys wanted to dress as Harry Potter this Halloween, so of course we had to jazz things up a bit. Let's make a working Harry Potter wand. Here are some supplies you are going to need, with specifics listed below the video. A plastic hollow Harry Potter wand, a Clearomizer, an air pump, tubing, a high-intensity LED, an LED snap-in mount, a 3-amp switch, 20-gauge wire, 3.7-volt 18650 battery, its charger, and its holder. Some extra Clearomizer coils, electrical tape, heat shrink, pure vegetable glycerin, distilled water, and an old sock. Just trust me on this. We are also going to need a few tools, a drill, some drill bits, wire snips, wire strippers, scissors, a multimeter, a hot glue gun, a heat gun, and some soldering equipment including solder, flux, helping hands, and of course a soldering iron. Let's get this show on the road, shall we? Keep it simple by assembling each component separately. Let's start with the wand itself. Use a 3/8 bit and drill a hole in the bottom of the wand, another for your thumb placement, and drill out most of the top of the wand. We need to make some relief cuts on both sides of the thumb placement hole and fold the flap down so that we can fit the switch inside. Feed the switch lines down through the hole in the bottom of the wand, fold the flap back in place, and secure the switch in place with the included mount. Press the button several times to make sure it is secure. Measure some wire about twice the length of the wand and cut it. Feed the wire from the bottom to the top of the wand. Now measure and cut some tubing of the same length. You can cut off any excess later. Feed it up through the wand as well. Your LED will sit at the tip of the wand. Typically, the longer leg of the LED is the positive leg. Separate the wires coming out of the tip of the wand and use the wire strippers to strip them both about 1/4 inch. Cut 2 pieces of heat shrink and slip them onto the ends of the 2 wires. Using the helping hands, add some flux to the positive wire and longer leg of the LED and solder them together. Do the same for the negative wire and shorter leg of the LED and snip off the excess LED legs. Slide the heat shrink up, covering the exposed lines, and use the heat gun to shrink it down. Alternatively, just wrap it in electrical tape. Attach the LED mount to the LED, and after stripping the other ends of the wires, use the battery to make sure the LED lights. Glue around the LED and tubing at the tip of the wand and push them into place. It should look something like this. Now let's move on to the air pump. Note that the bottom of the pump is marked showing which lead is positive. Cut a 14-inch length of wire, separate it, and strip it like before. Add flux, then solder to the wires to tin them and slip 2 more heat shrink pieces on each wire. Crimp the positive wire onto the positive lead, negative to negative, and solder them into place. Slide the heat shrink up and shrink them both down. Now you can test the pump with the battery to make sure it works. Let's take a look at the fog maker. The Clearomizer is what holds the fog juice and creates the fog. Unscrewing the bottom, we get access to the coil casing, and the other side's outer ring is the fog juice tank. The air passes up the middle. Unscrewing the metal casing further, we can more easily get to the contacts we need to solder wires to. For now, we're going to put it back together to make this next step easier. On the outside of the base there is a small hole. Use a 1/16 bit to enlarge it. Okay, back to the inside. This part is very important. The metallic end on the right is the positive lead to which we need to solder a wire. The plastic spacer separates it from where the negative lead attaches. When you solder this, make sure you do not cross that spacer, as you could short the circuit and possibly cause a fire. We're going to need another 14-inch length of wire again. This time, separate them completely. The positive wire needs to run inside of the tubing on one end, so use a 5/64 bit about 2 inches from the end, clean out any debris, and feed the positive wire through. Strip the end and tin the wire on that end. While you're at it, let's strip and tin one end of the negative wire as well. Put a 90-degree bend in the end of the negative wire and feed it through the hole we just enlarged. Crimp it down as flush as possible, add flux and solder into place, using the helping hands, as this piece will get extremely hot. After it cools and you clip off any excess wire, the piece should look like this. It then slides onto the tubing with the wire as we get ready to solder the positive line. Remember to be careful here, not crossing the plastic spacer. It should look like this when you are done. Gently pull the positive line back through the tubing so the tube can fit over the positive lead of the Clearomizer. At this point you may notice the base piece can't get past the tubing. If that happens, just pull the tubing back and it will separate at the spacer. You can then reconnect the base and push the tubing back through the center, reattaching the contact to the spacer. It should look like this. Use your multimeter on the continuity setting to make sure the current will flow through the Clearomizer coil. Now let's mix up some fog juice. A 50-50 mix of glycerin and distilled water makes some great fog. The Clearomizer tank will hold about 3/4 of a teaspoon. Make sure you put it in the outer ring of the tank without overfilling. If you overfill, the coil will saturate and it won't work well. Replace the base and hand tighten well to prevent leaks. This next part is easy. Simply cut the positive and negative lines off the battery holder, as we shouldn't need them because of the amperage we need. Alright, let's hook it all up. Gather the 3 positive wires from the wand, pump, and Clearomizer and solder them all together and slip a larger heat shrink over the joined lines. We're going to take these and solder them to the outside positive terminal on the battery holder, being careful not to melt any plastic. Don't shrink it down yet. Now join the 3 negative lines and slip another piece of heat shrink over them. Solder this group of wires to one of the lines from the switch in the wand, it doesn't matter which one. Slide up the heat shrink and shrink it down. Total amps on this system is a little over 2, so on the other line from the switch we're going to connect 2 wires to handle the amps on the return to the battery. Prepare them as usual and solder one end to the switch line, shrink it down, and the other end to the negative battery holder terminal, but don't shrink it down just yet. Pop the battery into the holder and attach the tube from the Clearomizer to the pump. When you press the button on the wand after the initial warm-up, you should have a steady stream of fog. The LED should also light up. Cut a small triangle out of the tube from the wand so that it fits snug inside the Clearomizer outlet. You should now see the fog coming out of the wand. Super cool. Just a few more things to wrap up. Shrink down the heat shrink on the battery terminals and put glue around the base of the wand. Wrap up all of your wires with electrical tape for a cleaner look. Add more glue around the base of the Clearomizer to keep the tubing put. Cut the toe off the old sock and line up the components like this so the Clearomizer always has an upward tilt on your right arm. Never mind the lack of wires and tubes, you should all be connected by now. The battery pack goes on the backside. Use twist ties to attach the Clearomizer to the sock and glue everything else down. Pull the sock onto your forearm, concealing it with your sleeve, and get ready to be the talk of the party. The fog is non-toxic and dissipates just like fog from a fog machine. If you like this video and want to see more like it, check out the other videos on my channel, and don't forget to subscribe. More videos to come later. Hey, thanks for watching.